Have you ever wondered how the notion of justice evolved into the criminal justice system we know today? Picture yourself in an era where public punishments and executions were considered entertainment, where justice was nothing more than an instrument of absolute power wielded by the few over the many. These were times when crowds would gather to witness public hangings as if attending a festival, when torture was not just legal but expected, and when the concept of fair trial was virtually non-existent. The transformation from these brutal practices to our modern system of justice is a tale filled with fascinating twists and profound changes in human thought. What forces drove us from public spectacles of punishment to modern prisons and systematized legal codes? What sparked this remarkable shift from arbitrary justice to a system based on written laws and individual rights? And perhaps most importantly, was this evolution truly progress toward a more humane society, or did it simply replace obvious forms of control with more subtle ones? Consider how we transitioned from a world where punishment was purely about retribution to one where rehabilitation became part of the conversation. This journey was marked by groundbreaking philosophical debates that questioned the very purpose of punishment. Social reformers challenged the status quo, while enlightened thinkers proposed radical new ideas about human rights and dignity. Yet this transformation wasn't simply a straight path toward improvement. It was filled with contradictions, setbacks, and unexpected consequences that continue to influence our justice system today. In this video, you'll uncover the secrets behind this remarkable transformation. We'll explore how pioneering thinkers challenged centuries-old practices, how social movements pushed for reform, and how new ideas about human dignity and rights fundamentally changed our approach to justice. You'll discover the hidden stories of those who fought to end torture as a legal practice, the visionaries who designed the first modern prisons, and the reformers who dared to suggest that punishment should serve a purpose beyond mere vengeance. From the dark cells of medieval dungeons to the structured corridors of modern penitentiaries, from arbitrary royal justice to complex legal codes, this is a story of how humanity grappled with fundamental questions about crime, punishment, and redemption. Join us as we unravel this compelling narrative of transformation, one that continues to shape our understanding of justice and human rights in the modern world. In the twilight of the 18th century, a silent revolution began reshaping the very foundations of justice, marking one of the most profound transformations in human history. This wasn't a revolution of swords and gunpowder, but of ideas and principles that would forever change how society approached crime and punishment. As the Age of Enlightenment reached its peak, a brave new wave of philosophers emerged, challenging centuries of cruel traditions. Among them stood Cesare Beccaria, whose revolutionary work shook the foundations of criminal justice. His radical idea? That punishments should fit the crime, a concept so foreign to his contemporaries that it sparked fierce debate across Europe. While kings and emperors clung to their traditional methods of torture and public execution, Beccaria and his fellow reformers dared to imagine a world where justice served reason rather than revenge. This period witnessed the birth of a new architectural marvel, the panopticon. Designed as the perfect prison, this revolutionary structure embodied the emerging philosophy of control and discipline. Its circular design, with a central watchtower, created an omnipresent sense of surveillance, transforming punishment from a public spectacle into a calculated system of behavioral modification. Yet beneath the surface of these apparent reforms, a darker reality lurked. While the face of justice changed, its heart often remained cold. New prisons, though more civilized in appearance, frequently became theaters of hidden abuse. The promise of reform masked new forms of control, as power simply shifted from the public square to behind institutional walls. The echoes of this transformation still reverberate through our modern world. Our current legal systems, prison structures, and approaches to criminal justice all bear the indelible marks of this pivotal period. From the way we conduct trials to our basic assumptions about crime and punishment, these 18th century innovations continue to shape our world in profound and sometimes troubling ways. This period raises questions that still challenge us today. Can institutions of confinement truly reform rather than just punish? How do we balance security with human dignity? And perhaps most importantly, have we really progressed, or have we simply made our systems of control more sophisticated? These questions and their complex answers lie at the heart of our modern understanding of justice. The story of this transformation is not just a tale of progress. It's a mirror reflecting our ongoing struggle with power, punishment, and the elusive concept of true reform. Want to discover how this process forever changed the course of history? Activate the bell, leave your like, and subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles. The story of criminal justice reform is brought to life through its remarkable characters, each playing a pivotal role in reshaping how society approaches crime and punishment. These figures, from brilliant philosophers to powerful rulers, and even the forgotten voices of those who suffered under the system, created a tapestry of change that continues to influence our world. Cesare Beccaria emerges as one of the most revolutionary figures of this transformation. This Italian philosopher, writing in the heart of the 18th century, dared to challenge centuries of accepted brutal practices. His masterwork, On Crimes and Punishments, published in 1764, sent shockwaves through European society. Beccaria argued for principles that seem obvious today but were radical in his time: that punishment should be proportional to the crime, that torture should be abolished, and that the death penalty had no place in a civilized society. His work influenced monarchs and lawmakers across Europe, proving that the power of ideas could transform even the most entrenched systems. Jeremy Bentham steps onto this stage as both philosopher and architect of change. His conception of the Panopticon prison in the 1780s represented more than just a building design. It was a complete philosophy of surveillance and control. Bentham's circular prison, with its all-seeing central tower, introduced the concept of psychological control through constant observation. While his specific design was rarely built exactly as envisioned, its principles revolutionized institutional architecture and shaped modern concepts of surveillance and power. Napoleon Bonaparte appears as the practical implementer of reform, though with his own autocratic twist. The Napoleonic Code, established in 1804, brought systematic organization to criminal law. This comprehensive legal framework became a model for countries across Europe and beyond, introducing standardized legal procedures and establishing the principle of written, accessible law. Despite its innovations, it also reflected Napoleon's authoritarian tendencies, showing how reform could be both progressive and controlling. But perhaps the most powerful stories come from those whose names history has largely forgotten. Consider the thousands of prisoners who experienced these changes firsthand. In the archives, we find accounts of individuals like Jean-Henri Latude, who spent decades in various French prisons, including the Bastille, and whose memoirs exposed the brutal reality behind the walls. Or the countless inmates of England's Newgate prison, whose experiences were documented by social reformers like John Howard, revealing the gap between enlightened theory and harsh reality. Women reformers like Elizabeth Fry emerged in the early 19th century, bringing attention to the particular plight of female prisoners and advocating for more humane conditions. Her work in London's Newgate prison demonstrated that reform could come from outside the traditional power structures. The victims of the justice system's excesses provide another crucial perspective. Their stories, often preserved in court records and prison documents, reveal the human cost of both traditional brutality and modernizing reform. These included not just the convicted, but also those awaiting trial, the wrongly accused, and the poor who were criminalized for their poverty. Each of these characters, from the philosophical innovators to the powerful implementers, from the reformers to the reformed, contributed to a complex narrative of change. Their stories interweave to reveal how personal vision, political power, and human suffering combined to transform justice from a tool of pure punishment into something that, at least in theory, aimed at rehabilitation and fairness. Their legacy lives on in every courtroom, prison, and legal code in the modern world, reminding us that systems of justice are built not just on laws and institutions, but on the actions and ideas of individuals who dare to imagine something different. Close your eyes and step back in time to a medieval prison. The first sensation that hits you is the overwhelming stench, a putrid mixture of human waste, rotting straw, and the dank moisture that seeps through ancient stone walls. The air is thick with the metallic taste of mold and decay, making each breath a conscious effort. In the darkness, water drips steadily from ceiling to floor, creating a haunting rhythm that marks time in this timeless hell. The sounds surround you, the constant rattling of chains echoing through narrow corridors, the desperate moans of prisoners, and the scurrying of rats across stone floors. The darkness is nearly complete, broken only by thin shafts of light filtering through narrow slits in the walls. The cold is relentless, seeping through the stones and into your bones, made worse by the perpetual dampness that seems to permeate everything. Now transport yourself to the dawn of modern incarceration, and witness a stark transformation. The chaotic darkness gives way to ordered light. The first modern prisons rise like monuments to rational thinking, their symmetrical architecture a physical manifestation of Enlightenment ideals. Long, straight corridors stretch into the distance, lined with individual cells arranged with mathematical precision. Sunlight streams through large windows, not for comfort, but as a tool of surveillance and control. The changes are profound. Instead of the communal squalor of medieval dungeons, prisoners now face solitude in individual cells. The irregular stones of ancient prison walls are replaced by uniform bricks, each one a testament to industrial precision. The architecture itself becomes an instrument of discipline, high walls, watchtowers, and cells arranged to maximize observation. Every aspect of the building serves a purpose in the new science of incarceration. Yet beneath this veneer of progress, new forms of suffering emerge. The physical torture of medieval times gives way to psychological pressure. The constant surveillance from central watchtowers creates an atmosphere of perpetual observation. Prisoners feel the weight of countless unseen eyes, their every movement potentially monitored. The silence in these modern structures is different from the medieval cacophony. It's deliberate, oppressive, used as a tool of control. The daily routine becomes a form of punishment itself. The mechanical precision of prison life, regulated meal times, enforced labor, scheduled exercise, creates a monotony that crushes the spirit in new ways. In workshops and prison yards, inmates face forced labor under the guise of rehabilitation. The clang of medieval chains is replaced by the rhythmic sound of industrial machinery, as prisoners become unwilling participants in the new age of industrialization. Even in these enlightened institutions, contradictions abound. While the buildings speak of order and reform, the reality inside often reveals a different story. Overcrowding turns single cells into cramped spaces holding multiple inmates. Disease still spreads, though now through ventilation systems designed for single occupancy. The damp cold of medieval dungeons is replaced by the suffocating heat of poorly ventilated cell blocks. This transformation from medieval to modern incarceration represents more than an architectural evolution. It embodies changing philosophies about punishment, reform, and human nature itself. Yet in both eras, the fundamental experience of imprisonment remains a testament to human suffering, whether through the brutal directness of medieval dungeons or the calculated efficiency of modern penitentiaries. The walls may have changed, but behind them, the struggle between punishment and rehabilitation, control and reform, continues to this day. The evolution of the penal system began with a crucial realization: the urgent need to abandon barbaric methods of punishment. This journey, however, was far from smooth, marked by countless challenges and setbacks that would shape the modern justice system we know today. In the early 19th century, a remarkable transformation began to take shape. Courts became more organized, adopting systematic procedures and established protocols. Scientific investigation methods emerged, bringing rationality to criminal proceedings. Forensic science took its first steps, introducing evidence-based approaches that would revolutionize how crimes were solved. This period marked the beginning of a more methodical approach to justice, moving away from arbitrary judgments and towards systematic prosecution. However, this evolution sparked an intense struggle between state control and individual rights. As governments sought to establish more efficient systems of control, citizens and reformers pushed back, demanding protection for basic human rights. This tension created profound conflicts that would shape the development of criminal justice for generations to come. The abolition of cruel practices like torture and forced labor represented significant progress in humanitarian terms. Society began to recognize that punishment should serve a purpose beyond mere retribution. Rehabilitation emerged as a concept, suggesting that offenders could be reformed rather than simply punished. This shift in perspective represented a fundamental change in how society viewed justice and human dignity. Yet, despite these advances, new challenges emerged. Prison overcrowding became a persistent problem, with facilities designed for hundreds forced to house thousands. Inequalities in the justice system became increasingly apparent, with the poor and marginalized often bearing the brunt of harsh sentencing. The very institutions created to deliver justice sometimes perpetuated injustice, creating a complex legacy that continues to challenge us today. The modernization of the penal system also brought technological and architectural innovations. New prison designs emphasize surveillance and control, while also attempting to maintain basic standards of human dignity. Classification systems were developed to separate different types of offenders, and educational programs were introduced in some facilities, albeit with varying degrees of success. The professionalization of law enforcement and corrections created new career paths, but also new forms of institutional power. Training programs were established for guards and wardens, while legal education became more standardized for judges and lawyers. These developments contributed to a more organized system, but also created new bureaucracies with their own challenges and limitations. The struggle between punishment and rehabilitation continues to define modern criminal justice. While some facilities emphasize education and skill development, others maintain a primarily punitive approach. The debate over the purpose of incarceration, whether to punish, deter, rehabilitate, or simply contain, remains as relevant today as it was 2 centuries ago. This story of transformation reflects broader changes in society's values and understanding of human behavior. The movement away from public executions and torture represents not just a change in punishment methods, but a fundamental shift in how society views justice, humanity, and redemption. Looking at our modern penal system, we can see both progress and persistent challenges. While we've moved beyond the brutal methods of the past, issues of overcrowding, inequality, and the effectiveness of rehabilitation programs continue to demand attention and reform. The history of penal reform reminds us that progress is possible, but requires constant vigilance and commitment to human dignity and justice. This fascinating journey through the evolution of criminal justice raises important questions for our time. How can we balance security with human rights? What role should rehabilitation play in our prison systems? Can we create truly equitable justice systems? These questions continue to challenge policymakers, reform advocates, and citizens alike, making this historical narrative deeply relevant to our contemporary discussions about justice and social reform. The story of penal reform is far from over. As we face new challenges and opportunities in the 21st century, understanding this history becomes crucial for shaping future reforms. What changes would you like to see in our modern prison systems? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated on more fascinating historical narratives. The transformation of the penal system is richly documented through an extraordinary collection of primary sources that paint a vivid picture of justice's evolution. Personal letters from prison reformers, official government documents, and philosophical treatises from the 18th and 19th centuries provide intimate insights into the intellectual battles that shaped modern criminal justice. Letters exchanged between influential thinkers like Cesare Beccaria and Voltaire reveal passionate debates about human rights and the purpose of punishment. Court records from various European countries document the gradual shift from arbitrary royal justice to more standardized legal procedures. Prison wardens' diaries offer haunting accounts of daily life behind bars, describing everything from prisoner behavior to institutional challenges. Artistic representations serve as powerful historical witnesses. Engravings by William Hogarth and other artists captured the grotesque spectacle of public executions at Tyburn in London, showing crowds gathering as if at a festival. French revolutionary prints depicted the transformation of the Bastille from a symbol of royal oppression to one of democratic triumph. These visual sources provide crucial evidence of society's changing attitudes toward punishment and justice. Architectural plans and prison records reveal the evolution of carceral spaces. Detailed blueprints of the Pentonville prison in London, opened in 1842, showcase the revolutionary separate system design, where inmates were kept in complete isolation. Maintenance records and building accounts from various European prisons document how these institutions were constructed and modified over time, reflecting changing philosophies about rehabilitation and control. Archaeological evidence has proven invaluable in understanding the physical conditions of historical incarceration. Excavations of medieval dungeons have uncovered instruments of torture, prisoner graffiti, and personal effects that tell stories of human suffering. Analysis of prison foundations and wall structures helps reconstruct the spatial experience of confinement across different eras. Medical records from prison hospitals provide disturbing insights into the health conditions faced by inmates. Reports from prison doctors detail the spread of diseases like typhus and cholera in overcrowded cells. Mental health observations, though often primitive by modern standards, document the psychological impact of various punishment methods. Administrative documents offer detailed information about prison operations. Ledgers record prisoner demographics, crimes committed, and sentences served. Guard duty rosters and incident reports reveal the day-to-day challenges of maintaining order. Financial records show the economic burden of maintaining these institutions and sometimes expose corruption within the system. Personal narratives from prisoners themselves provide some of the most compelling evidence. Memoirs smuggled out of prisons, letters to family members, and recorded testimonies describe the harsh realities of incarceration. These accounts often contrast sharply with official reports, highlighting the gap between institutional ideals and actual practices. Reform Society records and philanthropic organizations' documents demonstrate the role of civil society in pushing for change. Minutes from meetings of prison reform societies reveal the strategies and arguments used to advocate for more humane treatment. Correspondence between reformers shows the development of international networks dedicated to improving prison conditions. Legal documents trace the evolution of prisoners' rights and penal reform. Court decisions, legislative acts, and policy papers show the gradual recognition of basic human rights within the prison system. International agreements and conventions demonstrate the growing consensus about minimum standards for prisoner treatment. Photographic evidence, emerging in the late 19th century, provides stark documentation of prison conditions. Early photographs of cells, workshops, and prison yards offer unvarnished views of institutional life. Mug shots and prisoner identification photos reveal the faces of those caught in the system, humanizing historical statistics. These diverse sources not only tell the story of penal evolution, but also challenge us to think critically about justice and punishment. They reveal both progress and persistent problems, showing how many modern issues have deep historical roots. The evidence suggests that while methods of punishment have become more sophisticated, fundamental questions about justice, rehabilitation, and human dignity remain as relevant today as they were centuries ago. Current historians and researchers continue to uncover new documentation, adding layers to our understanding of penal history. Digital archives make these historical records more accessible than ever, allowing for deeper analysis and broader perspectives on the development of criminal justice systems worldwide. This rich tapestry of historical evidence serves as both a record of the past and a guide for the future. By understanding how our current system evolved, we can better appreciate both its achievements and its shortcomings, informing ongoing debates about criminal justice reform. The transformation of the penal system has generated profound and far-reaching consequences that continue to reverberate through modern society. These impacts span multiple dimensions, creating a complex web of both progress and new challenges that shape our current approach to justice. The immediate impact of legal systematization brought unprecedented changes to how justice was administered. The establishment of clear legal codes and standardized procedures significantly reduced arbitrary punishments and royal whims that had previously dominated the justice system. However, this systematization also created new bureaucracies and institutional rigidities that sometimes hampered justice rather than facilitated it. Prison overcrowding emerged as one of the most significant unintended consequences of penal reform. As imprisonment became the standard form of punishment, replacing public executions and physical torture, facilities quickly became overwhelmed. This problem, first documented in the early 19th century, persists today, creating conditions that often undermine the very principles of rehabilitation and human dignity that inspired reform in the first place. The social impact of penal reform has been particularly profound. The recognition of individual rights within the justice system sparked broader conversations about human dignity and civil liberties. This newfound awareness inspired various social movements, from prison reform advocates to civil rights activists, who continue to fight for equal justice under the law. The concept of rehabilitation, rather than mere punishment, has transformed how society views criminals and their potential for reform. Economic consequences have been equally significant. The modern penal system requires massive financial investments in infrastructure, staffing, and maintenance. The construction and operation of prisons have become major industries, creating jobs but also raising questions about the privatization of incarceration. The cost of maintaining large prison populations strains public budgets, often at the expense of other social services. Urban landscapes have been permanently altered by the presence of penal institutions. The architecture of prisons, with their imposing walls and watchtowers, has become a symbolic feature of modern cities. These structures often influence property values, local economies, and community development patterns in surrounding areas. Some historic prison buildings have been repurposed for other uses, while others stand as monuments to changing approaches to punishment. The psychological impact on society has been complex and multifaceted. While the elimination of public executions removed the spectacle of punishment from everyday life, the invisible nature of modern incarceration has created new forms of social anxiety and fear. The prison system has become both a deterrent and a source of fascination, as evidenced by its prominent role in popular culture and media. Technological advancement in the penal system has introduced new methods of surveillance and control, raising important questions about privacy and human rights. Electronic monitoring, biometric identification, and data-driven risk assessment tools have transformed how the justice system operates, creating both opportunities and concerns. The impact on families and communities, particularly in marginalized populations, has been devastating. Mass incarceration has led to the disruption of family structures, economic instability, and the perpetuation of cycles of poverty and crime. These effects often extend across generations, creating lasting social and economic challenges. Public health has been significantly affected by changes in the penal system. While modern prisons generally provide better sanitation and medical care than their historical counterparts, issues like mental health treatment, disease control, and addiction recovery remain serious challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic has recently highlighted the vulnerability of prison populations to public health crises. Educational and vocational training programs within prisons have had mixed results. While some initiatives have successfully reduced recidivism rates and provided inmates with valuable skills, many programs suffer from underfunding and inconsistent implementation. The effectiveness of rehabilitation efforts continues to be debated. The impact on criminal behavior and public safety remains controversial. While systematic legal codes and professional law enforcement have brought certain types of crime under control, new forms of criminal activity have emerged. The relationship between incarceration rates and crime reduction continues to be debated by experts. International influence has been substantial, as penal reform ideas and practices have spread globally. Different countries have adopted and adapted various aspects of modern penal systems, creating a diverse range of approaches to criminal justice worldwide. Looking toward the future, the impact of historical penal reform continues to shape debates about justice and punishment. Questions about the effectiveness of incarceration, alternatives to imprisonment, and the balance between punishment and rehabilitation remain central to discussions about criminal justice reform. These various impacts challenge us to consider whether our current system truly serves its intended purpose. Does it effectively reduce crime and promote rehabilitation, or does it perpetuate social problems while creating new ones? The answers to these questions will shape the future of criminal justice reform. What do you think about our current penal system? Does it solve more problems than it creates, or is it time for another fundamental transformation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to share this video to keep this important conversation going. The Enlightenment emerged as the cradle of revolutionary ideas about justice, marking a pivotal moment in human civilization that would forever transform our approach to crime and punishment. This intellectual movement, spanning the 17th and 18th centuries, created the perfect storm of philosophical, scientific, and social changes that would birth modern criminal justice systems. At the heart of this transformation lay the Enlightenment's unwavering faith in reason and human progress. Philosophers like Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Diderot challenged traditional authorities and superstitions, advocating for rational approaches to social problems. Their writings sparked fierce debates about the nature of justice, the purpose of punishment, and the relationship between the individual and state power. These discussions took place in salons and coffee houses across Europe, where intellectuals gathered to exchange ideas that would reshape society. The scientific revolution played a crucial role in this transformation. As empirical methods gained prominence, they began to influence criminal investigations. The development of forensic techniques marked the beginning of scientific criminology. Physicians started examining bodies systematically, laying the groundwork for modern forensic medicine. This scientific approach challenged traditional methods of determining guilt, which often relied on superstition or forced confessions. Medical science began to take an interest in the psychological effects of imprisonment, marking the birth of criminal psychology. Doctors documented the mental deterioration of prisoners in solitary confinement, leading to debates about humane treatment and rehabilitation. This medical perspective introduced new considerations about the relationship between mental health and criminal behavior, fundamentally changing how society viewed criminals. Educational reforms within prisons represented another significant development. Reformers argued that education could serve as a tool for rehabilitation, not just punishment. Prison libraries were established, and basic education programs were implemented in some facilities. These initiatives, though limited, represented a revolutionary shift in thinking about the purpose of incarceration. The arts played a crucial role in documenting and criticizing penal practices. Writers like Charles Dickens exposed the harsh realities of prison life through their works. Painters and engravers captured the grim conditions of prisons and the suffering of inmates, creating powerful visual testimonies that moved public opinion. These artistic representations helped humanize prisoners and generate support for reform movements. Political debates across Europe and the Americas grappled with questions of justice and punishment. The American and French revolutions brought new emphasis on individual rights and limited government power, influencing approaches to criminal justice. Different nations developed varying models of penal systems, reflecting their political and cultural values. Some emphasized rehabilitation, while others focused on deterrence through harsh punishment. The Industrial Revolution's impact on penal reform cannot be overstated. New manufacturing techniques enabled the construction of larger, more sophisticated prisons. The development of steam power and iron working influenced prison architecture and security systems. Industrial methods of organization were applied to prison management, creating more systematic approaches to incarceration. Religious movements also played a significant role in shaping penal reform. Quakers in particular advocated for more humane treatment of prisoners, believing in the possibility of spiritual reformation. Their influence led to the development of penitentiaries designed to encourage reflection and redemption rather than merely punishment. Urban growth and social changes created new challenges in maintaining order, leading to the development of professional police forces and more sophisticated legal systems. The emergence of middle-class reform movements brought sustained attention to prison conditions and prisoner rights. These social dynamics created pressure for systematic reform of criminal justice institutions. This convergence of philosophical, scientific, medical, educational, artistic, political, and social forces created the perfect conditions for a revolution in justice. The transformation wasn't sudden or uniform, but rather a gradual process that played out differently across various societies. Yet the fundamental shift in how humanity viewed justice and punishment during this period laid the groundwork for our modern understanding of criminal justice. The legacy of this civilizational context continues to influence contemporary debates about justice reform. Many of the questions raised during the Enlightenment about the purpose of punishment, the role of rehabilitation, and the balance between security and human rights remain relevant today. Understanding this historical context helps us better appreciate both the progress we've made and the challenges that still lie ahead in our ongoing quest for justice. What if the penal system had never evolved? Would we be living in a more just world, or would we find ourselves trapped in an era of unimaginable cruelty? As we explore this fascinating journey through the transformation of justice, let's consider some thought-provoking alternatives that challenge our understanding of progress and civilization. Imagine a world where public executions still draw crowds to town squares, where torture remains a legally sanctioned method of interrogation, and where the concept of rehabilitation simply doesn't exist. This isn't just a dark fantasy. It's a glimpse into what our present might have looked like without the revolutionary changes in criminal justice that we've explored today. Throughout our journey, we've encountered surprising connections between past and present. Consider how the debate over surveillance in modern prisons mirrors the philosophical questions raised by Bentham's panopticon design, or how current discussions about prison privatization echo the profit-driven systems of prisoner transportation in colonial times. These parallels reveal that while methods may change, fundamental questions about justice and human rights persist across centuries. The story of penal reform is filled with fascinating details that often go untold. Did you know that some of the first advocates for prison reform were actually former inmates who wrote detailed accounts of their experiences? Or that the first modern prisons were initially seen as tourist attractions, with wealthy visitors paying to observe this new form of punishment in action? Our modern justice system, despite its flaws, represents centuries of progress in human rights and dignity. Yet some argue that we've merely replaced obvious forms of control with more subtle ones. Are electronic monitoring anklets really more humane than physical chains? Has solitary confinement in modern facilities improved upon the isolation cells of historical prisons? These questions continue to challenge our assumptions about progress and justice. The evolution of criminal justice also reveals surprising influences from unexpected sources. Religious reformers, architects, philosophers, and even artists all played crucial roles in shaping how we think about crime and punishment. Their combined efforts created a revolution in justice that continues to influence our world today. Looking ahead, we face new challenges that our predecessors could never have imagined. How will artificial intelligence impact criminal sentencing? What role should virtual reality play in rehabilitation programs? Will space colonization require us to develop entirely new systems of justice? These questions demonstrate that the evolution of criminal justice remains an ongoing process. The story of penal reform reminds us that change often comes from unexpected places, and that progress isn't always linear. As we've seen, sometimes the most significant advances emerge from the darkest moments in human history. This understanding becomes crucial as we face contemporary challenges in criminal justice reform. If you found this exploration of justice's evolution fascinating, you're not alone. Our audience consistently tells us they're amazed by how historical developments continue to shape our present world. That's why we're committed to bringing you more in-depth analysis of these crucial historical transformations. Want to dive deeper into other aspects of justice system evolution? Our next episode will explore how the development of police forces transformed urban life in the modern era. You won't want to miss the surprising connections between past and present law enforcement methods. Remember to engage with our community in the comments below. What aspects of criminal justice evolution surprised you the most? How do you think our current system might evolve in the coming decades? Your perspectives add valuable insights to this ongoing discussion. For exclusive content and early access to our videos, don't forget to subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles and hit that notification bell. Share this video with friends who appreciate deep dives into historical transformations. They'll thank you for introducing them to these fascinating stories. Join us next time as we continue exploring the remarkable twists and turns of modern history. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep engaging with the past to better understand our present. See you in our next episode of Modern Age Chronicles.